Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got about 15 articles here for you this morning, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Conservative Tribune. It says, NATO putting troops in pop-up border town, right on Russia's doorstep. Of determination in tense international, well, sure as I try to get going, hamster wants to rip it out from under me. Okay, let's try that again. In a show of determination in tense international times, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has been deploying troops Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and other countries to border Russia or are close to it. One such contingent included 50 combat engineers from Canada, Latvia in April to build a brand new NATO base to house approximately 500 soldiers, according to the independent research group Research on Globalization. This one, led by the United States, that arrived in Poland in early April, reportedly included 1,350 soldiers, according to the research. Just a few days after a NATO-Russia Council meeting took place on March the 30th. Likewise, British troops were scheduled to be stationed in Romania, while British, French, and Danish forces were slated to be deployed to Estonia. Amid these arrivals, tensions in the region have reached a new high, with locals fretting over what deployments may portend. I'm not afraid for myself, but I fear for my children with NATO here. One 52-year-old Russian woman living in the Latvian town of told the National Post. A war, it would be nuclear. What's interesting is that many of the Russian-speaking locals had already sided with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Everything that the West says about Vladimir Putin is wrong. He is a level-headed and did nothing against anybody in eastern Ukraine and Crimea. I do not believe that Putin will start a new war. Were likely due to propaganda. The airwaves and the internet in Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania are constantly bombarded these days with naked appeals to the patriotism of the Baltic states. Large and ethnic Russian minorities allegations that they and their NATO allies are encircling Russia, the National Post noted. To shove, the locals living in those countries may suffer gravely, though the blame for their tribulations will likely lie with Putin, not NATO. The next article that I have for you, off of, well, I don't know yet. The hamster flips it up here for me. Okay, it's off BizPack Review. It says, outrage escalates over new video that shows Turkish president ordering security thugs to attack. Recep Tayyip Erdogan looked on indifferently as his bodyguards beat up protesters outside the Turkish embassy in Washington, D.C. this week. That's what's try that again. That's what disturbing audio and video analysis shows. The melee erupted on Tuesday after Erdogan protesters were brutally kicked and shoved by courier of thuggish Turkish bodyguards. Erdogan had just met with President Trump at the White House preceding the brawl. Erdogan is seen sitting in the back of a black Mercedes, erupts several yards away. He then exits the car, calmly looks over and walks away. Sound editor named Salah Farad, who analyzed the audio, told the Daily Caller that Erdogan had ordered the attack on protesters. He says, attack, Erdogan's personnel bodyguard reportedly tells security. In Erdogan's men shout, gel, gel, gel. The translation is come, come, come. And Dalin, Dayor, Dalin, Dayor, Dalin, Dayor. And the translation is, he says, attack. Department condemned the attacks and said it's investigating the matter. Senator John McCain joined a growing bipartisan chorus of lawmakers who were outraged by the brutality. McCain even went as far as to say the Turkish ambassador should throw the hell out, or should be thrown the hell out of the United States. We should throw their ambassador the hell out of the United States of America, McCain told MSNBC. This is the United States of America. This isn't Turkey. This isn't third world country. And this kind of thing cannot go unresponded to diplomatically. Republican Congressman Ed Royce, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, sent a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson demanding accountability. You immediately look into this matter and bring all appropriate criminal charges before these individuals leave the United States, Royce wrote. Agents of foreign governments should never be immune from prosecution for felonious behavior. Erdogan's thugs are unlikely to face any consequences since they likely have diplomatic immunity. Despite its shoddy dictatorial leadership, Turkey is a longtime NATO ally, so the United States cannot flippantly react against it. Clueless moonbats who slam President Trump as a fascist dictator, it really looks like. More video of the attack can be seen at a link here in this URL if you want to pull it up and click on it. In 2016, the Turkish armed forces staged an unsuccessful coup to overthrow Erdogan. Muslim nations. Over 300 people were killed, and nearly 50,000 security and civilian service personnel were expelled. It says, meanwhile, Twitter's response against Erdogan's brutality was immediate and intense. Please join me by asking for justice for those who were attacked yesterday by Erdogan's bodyguards. Another one says, as any media boss, Sultan Erdogan has no bodyguards but thugs in his visit to Washington, D.C. And there's a whole bunch more of them here showing, with pictures showing the mayhem that transpired. The next one we have here is off of the Daily Beast. And it says, Russia's killer satellites reawaken. The trio of mysterious spacecraft were idle for at least a year. Foreign satellites again, and no one really knows why. A trio of mysterious Russian government satellites started space experts when shortly after blasting into low orbit between 2015, they began dramatically changing their orbits, demonstrating a rare degree of maneuverability for craft. Now, after being idle for a year or more, two of the mystery sats are on the move again. On April the 20th of 2017, one of them reportedly shaved hundreds of meters of its orbit in order to zoom within of a big chunk of defunct Chinese in a controversial 2007 test of an anti-satellite rocket. That's pretty close. Craft's impressive maneuvers, observers scratching their heads. No one outside the Russian government and military seems to know for sure what the satellites are for. The Russian satellites could be technology demonstrators. They might also be orbital weapons. Either way, the nimble spacecraft are intriguing. A space expert, Space Union of Concerned Scientists, beast. Those who know for sure aren't talking. The Russian space agency didn't respond to an email seeking comment and has barely mentioned the mystery craft at all since the late 2014. Force, which tracks all world satellites, issued the same statement it released the first time the Russian satellites started moving around. U.S. Strategic Command's Space Component tracks Cosmos and 2499, as well as more than 23,000 man-made Earth-orbiting objects every day, Captain Nicholas Mercurio, an Air Force spokesman, told the Daily Beast. The original trio of satellites, by their Russian code names, Cosmos 2491, Cosmos 2499, and Cosmos 2504, maneuvering toward specific targets in space when they first began their orbital dances. 2014 and 2015 and 2016, the roughly 200-pound satellites moved closer and closer to spent stages of the rockets that had delivered them into orbit, within a few dozen feet from the old booster shells. That implied that the Cosmos triplets, inspection satellites capable of closely matching the orbit of another spacecraft, or even physically interacting with it in order to repair, modify, or dismantle it. The Pentagon calls these a proximity. Indeed, Anatoly Zak, an independent expert on Russian spacecraft, claimed that the mystery sats might match the dimensions of a known Russian inspection satellite called, and I know I'm going to butcher this, Ilini, and that's as close as I'm going to get to whatever that is. The possible wartime applications of inspection satellites. You can probably equip them with lasers, maybe put some explosives on them, Zach said of Cosmos triplets in 2015. If one comes very close to some military satellite, it probably can do some harm. Inspection satellites are not new. The U.S. government operates several of them, but secret inspection satellites are rare and potentially problematic, considering how easy they could be converted into weapons. Moscow took pains to obscure at least one of the Cosmos mystery sats. The Russian Space Agency launched Cosmos 2491, a single rocket that also carried 3 non-maneuvering communication satellites. Announced the comms sats in advance. They didn't mention Cosmos 2491 until after foreign and independent space watchers Cosmos 2491, which they had initially mistaken for debris, move under its own power. December of 2014, Russian Space Agency Chief Oleg Ko insisted that the maneuverability spacecraft were peaceful in purpose and not, as some feared, killer satellites. 91 has apparently been inactive. 14 Cosmos 2499 executed dramatic maneuvers in the spring of 2016 until March of 2017. Cosmos 2504 orbited like dead weight years since performing close past rocket stage in October of 2015. Around the same time, Cosmos 2499 came back to life. Before began moving closer to that chunk of old Chinese weather satellite. The periods of idleness are not insignificant, stressing that she had not verified the details of the Russian satellite's recent movements. Interesting that the satellite would go dormant for 2 years and then come back to life to maneuver. That could help the satellite be stealthy. One strategy to keep maneuvering satellites stealthy is to pretend they are debris, not to have them maneuver at all at first, later. To be confident, you might want to be able to test if your equipment works after being idle for months or years. Despite the weirdness of the Cosmos craft's behavior, Brian Whedon, a space expert at the Secure World Foundation in Colorado, assuming the mystery sats are or will ever be weapons. In most cases, it's easier to jam a satellite's communication or hit it with a missile than to try to do some sort of destructive rendezvous, Whedon told the Daily Beast. To do rendezvous and proximity operations has a whole bunch of applications, civil, commercial, and military. It's worth noting that one of America's own highly maneuverable Space 37B robotic mini shuttle returned to Earth in early May of 2017 after spending 718 days in low orbit, a record for the type. The Air Force, which operates the two X-37Bs, has always insisted that the maneuverable mini shuttles are strictly experimental. It has declined to discuss the craft's missions, much like the Russians with their maneuverable satellites. Is off a BizPack review. As soon as the hamster gets it up here. Meddling had nothing to do with Trump. It was all about revenge on Hillary. The intelligence overheard a Russian operative brag about targeting Hillary Clinton in an upcoming 2016 presidential election as payback for an influence the former Secretary of State ran against Vladimir Putin 5 years earlier. Senior intelligence officials told that Russian military intelligence officer with a GRU said his group was going to cause in the upcoming U.S. election to pay Clinton back for what President Vladimir Putin believed influence operation she had run against him during Russian elections. In 2011, protests broke out in 70 Russian cities, organized on social media by a popular blogger named Alexei, who used his blog as well as Twitter and Facebook to get crowds in the streets, Time reported. Took to the streets amid allegations Putin's party Russia rigged the election results. Were the largest demonstrations in the 1990s and bled into Putin's 2012 presidential campaign. Putin won his re-election. Newly installed head of military intelligence Igor Sergin to begin repurposing cyber weapons previously used for psychological operations in war zones for use in electioning. U.S. officials who overheard Russian officials discussing their cyber campaign against Clinton in a report, experts didn't see what was coming. Understand the context. Much later, the senior intelligence official told Time that officials now realize that the boast indication U.S. spies had from their sources that Russia wasn't just hacking email accounts to collect intelligence, but was also considering the boat. Times report runs up against claims made by Democrats and some media outlets that Russian officials tried to help President Donald Trump's campaign during the election. Instead, Putin wanted to hurt Clinton, regardless of who was opposing her. He blamed Clinton for the protests, saying she set off the protests with a signal. The Department of State said it had only funded pro-democracy organizations in the country. Clinton said the U.S. had serious concerns about the 2011 election. She called a full investigation of all reports of fraud and intimidation. The Russian people, like people everywhere, deserve the right to have their voices heard and their votes counted, Clinton said. And that means they deserve free, fair, transparent elections and leaders who are accountable to them. 4 days later, more than 50,000 protesters marched on Moscow. Demonstrations had taken place in the previous week. Another major protest took place on December the 24th. 12 protesters demonstrated outside in Moscow the day before Putin's inauguration. She set the tone for some opposition activists. Signal. They heard the signal and started active work, Putin said of Clinton in 2011. Guard ourselves from this interference in our internal affairs. Next article, newsbusters.org. It says, guests remind NBC, CNN, classified intel to Russia. Well, CNN joined the rest of media in rushing to condemn the Trump White House over an unconfirmed Washington Post report that the president inadvertently shared classified information with Russian officials. Guests on both networks provided important context that the Obama administration intentionally shared classified intelligence with Russia less than a year ago. Appearing on Friday's NBC Today, security analyst Juan Zarte warned the problem is the Russians aren't trustworthy. The Russians have proven that when we provided information in the past, they've used it against us. He then proceeded to explain how former President Obama gave the Russians classified information just months ago. If you want to pull it up to watch it. It says, meanwhile, over on CNN's New Day, Jeffrey Lord provided some perspective to anchor Chris Como. The only thing I would say here, Chris, is perspective. Perspective is all. Two headlines from Washington Post, one of May the 25th of 2014, White House mistakenly identifies CIA chief in Afghanistan. The Obama administration puts the name of CIA on the press release, exposed him, and endangered his life. The second one, June the 30th of 2016, offers to share Syrian intelligence on terrorists with Russia, which is to say, the Obama administration wanted to give their to the Russians. All I'm saying here is there's perspective. We need to find out the facts, have perspective. Incidentally, notice that the 2014 story was from the same Post reporter, Greg Miller, who wrote Monday's article. In sharp contrast to the wall-to-wall media coverage of the Trump story, Obama offering to share intel with Russia was greeted with yawns from the press. Here are excerpts of the May 16 exchange on NBC and CNN. Here in this, if you want to pull that up and read that for yourself. To the next article, it's all for Liberty Writers. And I'm waiting for the hamster. Wheels are spinning. Okay, it's coming up here. Breaking. Trump just announced top pick for new FBI director. The winner is a Democrat. President Donald Trump has been working hard to figure out who would replace James Comey as the next FBI director. After a week of interviews and roughly 10 names floated, Trump has finally decided who his top pick is. Earlier today, when he was swarmed by reporters, a voice asked the president who his top pick for FBI director was. The answer was shocking. Donald Trump said his number one pick right now for the next director of the FBI is Joe Lieberman. That's right, Democrat Joe Lieberman is currently Trump's frontrunner for the top job. This is the same guy who ran as Al Gore's vice president back in 2000. Lieberman is an interesting pick for sure. He has no experience with the FBI or a federal judgeship. However, what he does have is an absolute hate for leaks. It is believed that President Trump selected Lieberman because he has openly endorsed prosecuting newspapers and journalists who publish leaked classified information. It is actually a pretty genius move. Trump's bigger annoyance right now are the fibbing press and their anonymous insiders. This way, he shuts the Democrats and the leakers up in a single move. The next article is off of Liberty Writers. President Trump just gave Sheriff Clark the job of a lifetime. Sheriff Clark is now going to be joining the Trump administration. He announced it on Vicki McKenna's show, according to Gateway Pundit. Here is the tweet from Vicki McKenna. It says, confirmed is an exclusive interview on my show. Sheriff Clark will leave his position as Milwaukee County Sheriff for a position at DHS. Sheriff Clark made this announcement and said that he would be joining the Trump administration in the Department of Homeland Security. Sheriff David Clark will now be Assistant Secretary in the Department of Homeland Security, according to the Budget Pundit. If you remember, this is what Sheriff David Clark had to say about the Second Amendment, and there's video of that if you want to pull it up and listen to that. And then the article says, Trump and Mr. David Clark are going to kick butt and take names together. The next article I have is off of BizPac Review. And I'm waiting for the hamster, and he's running as fast as he can go. Lindsey Graham irks his with revelation of obstruction in Clinton email probe. During a Thursday appearance on America's News HQ that covered a range of issues from Syria to the appointment of prosecutor, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham dropped a bombshell that, if true, could mean serious trouble for Hillary Clinton campaign operatives. A new front opening in the Russia investigation, Graham said that he has reason to believe that Clinton campaign officials emailed the Department of Justice during the Clinton email investigation. And he would like to see those emails turned over to the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's a new front opening here, Graham said. I have reason to believe that there are emails between Clinton campaign officials, Democratic operatives, to the Department of Justice regarding the Clinton email investigation that happened on Obama's watch. That those emails exist. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and I think that it's important that the committee be given any emails that were directed to the Department of Justice by any Clinton campaign or Democratic officials. No, did the Department of Justice receive communication from the campaign? Graham continued. If there was a communication to the Department of Justice about an ongoing investigation from people who are the subject of the investigation, I want to know that. Front about all these things, Russia and Trump, and I want this investigation to go where facts lead. Everything's on the table in terms of finding out about what the Trump campaign did with the Russians, if anything, and I think it should be both ways. Perhaps, in Coulter's words, may be more prophetic than we think. And there is a video of an interview here if you want to listen to that. It says, given his history, Graham is unusually quite popular among liberals, but this move could cost him. And there's a whole list of tweets about it if you want to pull it up and read those. The next one I have is off of Western Journalism. And the hamster is peddling and peddling, peddling that wheel. McCain says Trump scandals have reached Watergate proportions. McCain, Republican of Arizona, event Tuesday that scandals surrounding President Trump have reached a Watergate size and scale. I think it's reaching the point, size and scale, and a couple other scandals McCain said of this alleged tie between President Trump and Russia. It's the centipede continues to drop. Every couple of days, there's a new aspect of this really unhappy situation. The Arizona Republican statement came at the International Republican 17 Freedom Dinner being held in his honor. His statement came just hours after a report by the New York Times alleging that Trump asked former FBI Director James Comey in February to cease his investigation into the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. I hope you can let this go, Trump allegedly told Comey, and reportedly documented a memo recorded by the former FBI director. The New York Times reported it had not seen a copy of the memo, but one of Comey's associates read part of it. Reporter McCain told retired CBS host Bob Schieffer, oops, jumping around here. There we go. The actions he believes Trump should take in response to the seemingly ever-ending flow of damaging media reports. McCain advised Trump to do the same thing that you advised Richard Nixon, which he didn't do. Get it all out. It's not going to be over until every aspect of it is thoroughly examined and the American people make a judgment. The delay, the longer it's going to last. Also blasted the president, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, into the Oval Office last week. Guy Lavrov for 30 years. He's an old KGB Aberchik stooge. A murderer and a thug, McCain said, and to have Lavrov in the Oval Office and be friendly with the guy who's an aircraft with precision weapons to attack hospitals in Aleppo, acceptable. McCain's office quickly issued a clarifying Tuesday night. Senator McCain's comments tonight were simply meant to convey that the constant revelation of events surrounding Russia's interference in the 2016 election, past scandals for America, and require further scrutiny. Spokeswoman Julie Torello called for a selection committee or a select committee to investigate all aspects of Russia's interference in the 2016 election and surrounding it. I am constantly amazed. Kane actually believes that people give a fat rat's rear end what he thinks about anything. Stooge country, the laughing stock of the Republican Party, should be ashamed of his face in this nation. And I'm even more shocked at the people that keep electing him into office. The next article we have is off of Conservative Tribune. Bombshell, Hillary camp email connects to WAPO hit on Trump. It's time to take a closer look at these emails. When the Washington Post ran a story Monday claiming that President Donald Trump had leaked classified information about the Islamic State group to Russia, the media lit up like a Christmas tree. Exhausted Salon.com editor, no doubt, exclaimed to himself, organic foe, here's the thing we can pretend to be outraged about for the next month. Thus began a flood of strongly worded screeds from what's become known as the blue feed, accusing the president of everything from treason to really, really bad treason. Never mind, of course, that the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, insisted the president's discussions were wholly appropriate. The president in no way compromised any sources or methods in the course of this conversation, according to Fox News. The die was cast in the liberal media, and the email from John Podesta may explain why. As you may know, the bulk of John Podesta's emails from his time with Hillary Clinton's campaign is now in the hands of WikiLeaks for certain reasons. Now, one of the messages he sent about how the left should try and capitalize on leakers is being re-examined. The period before Clinton announced her presidential campaign, in it he says, I'm definitely making an example of the suspected leaker, whether or not a real basis for it. It had to do with leaks within the Clinton campaign. However, the idea of making an example of a suspected leaker done anything is definitely an ominous one. If we get this to scroll up a little bit. Well, a little bit, not all the way to the bottom. Come on. And there's something trying to play. That's why. And we need to get that stopped. I think I may have stopped him. While the quote has been seized upon by a few conspiracy theorists in the case of murdered DNC staffer Seth Rich, it has a deeper significance to the Clinton people and their cohort on the left. Accusing people of things they didn't really do is just another implement in the political toolbox. We'd also like to point out, to be untrue, it wouldn't be the first time a story from the Washington Post that relied on anonymous sources turned out to be fake news. The Federalist noted scoops from the Trump White House that has been obtained by that method. The alleged threat of Deputy Attorney General Rod J. Rosenstein to resign, an allegation that James Comey had requested more resources for the Department of Justice's investigation into Trump's Russia leaks, and a story that Steve Bannon had confronted DHS chief, were all later denied. That's to be expected, but perhaps less expected is just who denied them, namely Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, the Department of Justice, and General Kelly, respectively. If there was ever a time for a government official to issue a non-denial or simply keep quiet, those stories certainly would have fit the bill if they were true. Is really good at making people lie in a very public fashion, or Skillian anonymous source types did the media wrong again. You make the call. I think you can tell which side I'm leaning toward. We don't know exactly what Trump said at the White House to Russian visitors that puts us in the same boat as the denizens of the Washington Post media establishment, who are relying on word of anonymous sources versus the word of White House, who insist that the premise of this article is false. Is that this story is short on specific details. The left is doing everything in its power to delegitimize the Trump White House. Perhaps it's time to take a closer look at Podesta's thoughts, example of leaker. Next article is off BizPac Review. Rice taken on rough trip down memory lane when she decides to lecture Trump on values. Oh, totally lacking all self-awareness. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice found it outrageous that President Donald Trump would be willing to sit at the same table as a genocidaire. She was commenting on a report by the Guardian's Julian Borger that Sudanese President Omar Hassan Ahmad al-Bashar intends to attend a Saudi Islamic summit, will also be in attendance. The U.S. Embassy in Khartoum, Sudan, issued a statement denouncing al-Bashar's attendance, or, for that matter, the travel by any person subject to an international criminal court arrest warrant. Also, there has been no charge to Sudan inclusion on United States sponsor of terrorism, SSTL. The embassy statement continued, "We've been quite clear with the government of Sudan on the need to be taken for us to consider delisting, as well as what would be required to progress in easing economic sanctions." But that was wholly inadequate to Rice, who blasted the administration on social media. Tweet that says, "This is outrageous. The U.S. president sitting down with a genocidist. Have we totally lost our values? Crazy even by today's standards." Do you really want to go there? During his first presidential campaign, then candidate Obama indicated a willingness to meet with, and let's get this scroll, come on. World leader, including state sponsor of terrorism. And is this the notion that somehow not talking to countries is punishment to them, which has been the guiding diplomatic principle of the administration, is ridiculous, he said in 2007 CNN Democratic primary debate. Then there's the matter of the $1.7 billion in cash the Obama administration sent to Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. You have long memories and didn't forget any of this, beginning with Obama's buddy-buddy relationship with Cuba's murderous dictator, Raul Castro. And waiting for it to scroll up a little bit. It says, and yes, the two did sit down together, and they've got a picture of them. Obama and Castro. It says, and the trip down memory lane continued, and there's a list of tweets. You just scroll here. There's the issue of Rice's own sins and foibles while working in the Obama White House, especially her propensity to stretch the truth to the American people. And there's a bunch more tweets. Live in glass houses, shouldn't throw stones, and Rice has a habit of pitching rocks toward the Trump administration at every opportunity. This article is off of the Common Sense Show with Dave Hodges. It says, will there be a civil war if Trump is impeached? Never before have we seen such a collection of mainstream media outlets to conspire to take a sitting president out of office. The Washington Post, a proven front for the CIA, ABC News, CNN, and other CIA-controlled operations, and the New York Times have presented a uniform front of falsified evidence against Donald Trump with absolutely no concrete evidence that Trump has violated the law and should be impeached and criminally convicted and sentenced. If Trump is impeached, will there be civil war? Allegations and evidence against Trump. Trump is accused of conspiring with the Russians to fix the results of the election. He is also accused of leaking leaking intelligence information to the Russians. Further, it's alleged that Trump obstructed justice. These crimes is absolutely non-existent. There has not been one shred of evidence to support any of these allegations. The closest that the deep state has come to producing evidence is the word of one man immediately after being fired by Trump, and I'm referring to James Comey. Comey allegedly wrote down content related to conversations he had with Trump in which Trump obstructed justice by telling Comey to stop investigating Flynn. If this were true, I've been required to report this to the Department of Justice immediately. Comey, by not reporting the allegation, either obstructed justice or is lying. There is no further evidence to support these allegations. As I said in yesterday's article, the clear intent is to keep Trump and Putin divided because of their expressed common desire to eliminate child sex trafficking from the landscape of government and deep state politics. Rules for thee, but not for me. While the people of this country live under the mantra of repeating a big enough lie often enough, the people will come to believe it. The MSM outlets have totally ignored the heinous and serial criminality of Hillary Clinton. Allegedly, number one, allegedly brokered arms deals with 16 nations with terrorist ties and launched the gifts into the Clinton Foundation through the HSBC Bank, while James Comey was on the bank's board of directors. Number two, illegally sold 25% of the nation's uranium to Russia, while husband Bill received overpriced speaking engagements in Russia. This is called treason. By the way, the New York Times first reported these allegations involving Uranium One as the front company. Illegally laundered, that's number three, illegally laundered her ill-gotten Clinton Foundation gains into her presidential campaign. Number four, the Clinton Foundation stole $2 billion in Haitian relief money. Number five, stored national security emails on her private server and attempted to cover it up. There's your obstruction of justice violation along with Comey's facilitation of this crime. There are a host of other serious crimes that have gone unpunished, but justice is selective in America today because there is an agenda to destroy the American dream. Why? Because in the New World Order, under the direction of the banksters, everyone is in debt so that they can be controlled. Because we are playing in a game with no rules, it is important to know that Trump will be impeached solely based on the strength of fabricated evidence, and in most cases, no evidence at all. In today's deep state, America, perception is reality. Opinion rules over fact. Intimidation rules over the free expression of ideas. Entered the Nazi Germany period of the Enabling Act. Soon, your guns will be confiscated. The First Amendment and the internet will soon become strangers. George Soros controls the modern day brown shirts. The fate that befell Seth Rich will become standard, and with a completely controlled media, there will be nobody to identify and speak against the abuses of the ruling party. Donald Trump is the stopgap for this movement. With his removal, there is a clear road for the total subjugation of America. Will there be a revolution in America? The answer to the question is no, an emphatic no. Donald Trump's campaign should have been enough to wake America up. There was no more of a salient issue as the free trade agreements. These agreements remove America's sovereignty. They destroy the employment market at home. They have done move to lower the standard of living that any other single factor. Which it should say more. Try that again. They have done more. Somebody made a typo. They've done more to move lower. For crying out loud, now I can't read it. They have done more to lower the standard of living than any other single factor. However, most Americans don't know a free trade agreement from a free agent in football. America has become one of the most dumbed down countries in the world. Of Americans cannot find North Korea on a map. They are buried in our entertainments. We are distracted to dumbness. Many Americans make the mentally retarded look informed by comparison. In short, we are being led to slaughter with smiles on our faces. It's a game over except for one possible factor. Can anything be done? Won't the people get tired of the abuse? And when Trump is impeached and thrown out of office, won't the people revolt? The short answer is no. The event will be theater for 3/4 of the country and nothing more. There is, however, one issue that could awaken a sleeping giant: loss of the guns, internet, First Amendment, and the loss of jobs immediately or ultimately the forfeiture of our country's sovereignty. The only thing that even the most ignorant will hold dear is the overall welfare of their children. America may not know what internet freedom means, but they understand what sexual abuse of a child is all about. On this point, most species will defend their offspring to the death. This fact alone tells us where we in the independent media should focus our efforts. Quite simply, Pedogate and the deep state connection to it must be hammered home day after day. Trump must be portrayed by us as a defender of children. If he won't say it, we need to say it for him. And what if we are successful in rousing our citizens to action based on the crimes committed against children? We will have a civil war and many will die. What will happen if we do nothing and the globalist agenda goes forward? Soon, 90% of you to see how this is going to end. America, you have to make a choice. You can distract yourself until death, or you can risk death by defending what's precious. And to my colleagues in the independent media, I feel I have identified the anti-sleeping pill that America has taken, and it is to fully expose child sex trafficking. Tick, tick, tick. Time is very short. All that we have here is off of Business Pack Review. Once you're spinning in a wheel. Says Trey Gowdy actively seeks new position, but he's got some competition. Republican Representative Trey Gowdy of South Carolina is reportedly considering a bid for chairman of the House Committee Reform. Currently, House Oversight Chairman Jason Chavez is expected to leave office before the end of June, according to the Washington Post, leaving his post on the powerful committee open. In addition to Gowdy, Representative Ross of Florida and Steve Russell of Oklahoma have also been floated to fill the role. Trey Ross and Steve Russell are all reaching out to members about oversight gavel. The Hill Scott Wong tweeted on Thursday. Gowdy's office has confirmed he has not ruled out seeking the position and is going through the process of discussing qualifications with his congressional colleagues. Representative Gowdy to members in the conference about the qualifications they believe are most important for the next chairman to possess, Gonzalez said in a statement to the Post and Courier. Reports House GOP leadership was courting Gowdy in April to avoid having Representative Jim Jordan, the former head of the House Freedom Caucus, lead the committee if Representative Jimmy Duncan of Tennessee, the most senior member on the panel next to Chavez, opts not to run. Mark Sanford of South Carolina, member of the House Freedom Caucus, is also reportedly weighing for the post. The chairman will be responsible for the carrying out of oversight of the branch. The next article, headlines. And the hamsters are running. A sues California Gunmageddon law. The National Rifle Association is suing the state of California over a law restricting magazine capacity to 10 bullets or less used in its unconstitutional limitation. The NRA, Institute for Legislative Action, or the ILA, California Rifle and Pistol Association, called the CRPA, are spearheading the lawsuit launched by the NRA this year against the state. Filed Thursday in federal court in San Diego is part of the NRA's efforts to counter an array of new gun laws in California, collectively referred to as the Second Amendment enthusiast by Gunmageddon, enacted in the wake of the San Bernardino terrorist attacks, reported Angeles Times. The law bans the sale and possession of magazines, ammunition capacity greater than 10. The NRA argues Duncan versus Becerra, the magazine restrictions are unconstitutional, violating the Due Process Clause. California routinely enact laws that only affect laws that only affect law-abiding, enhance public safety. Chris Cox, executive director of the NRA-ILA, said in a statement, that will follow is an effort to ensure the rights of law-abiding gun owners are respected in California. Gun owners have long capacity magazines in California and argue that the state retroactively banning and seizing the property tramples on their due process rights. The NRA filed their first lawsuit aimed at the restrictions set of California, April the 24th, challenging a measure banning the sale and possession of semi-automatic rifles equipped with bullet buttons, which allow the user to change magazines relatively quickly. They argue this is a violation of the taking clause in the Constitution, which protects against seizure of private property without just compensation from the government. Newsom ripped the NRA lawsuit as a deceitful agenda and said their efforts will fail. This article is off of enenews.com. This is the last one for the day, so the hamster will get a break after this. He'll be happy. This alert, official warns of more collapses at U.S. nuclear site. High spikes in radiation levels recorded. Expert says plutonium warned. Major concerns over radioactive releases. Government delays revealing data to the public. Tiny print, so let me blow it up here. Big enough to read. Anyway. So, it says Hanford official says tunnel could collapse again. Less than a week after tunnel collapse at Hanford's Purex site, Senator Cantwell visited the nuclear site on Saturday, concerned about the recent collapse more. There is still a potential that we could have an additional collapse of the tunnel, said Doug Shoup, manager of the Department of Energy Richland Operations Office. What we will be doing, weather permitting, will be putting cover over the top of that tunnel, number one, said Shoup. That cover is meant to keep radioactive particles in the dirt from flying into the air in the event of another collapse. That was May the 14th, and these read in reverse. So if you want to pull this up and check these out, you can pull it up and read all about this the nuclear plant that's been going on. You know, while Washington is trying to figure out about Comey and Trump and all of this, the rest of the world is going on, and it's not being reported anywhere. So that's what I've got for you this morning. If you like what I'm trying to do here, I tell you what, this news is just, it's outrageous, absolutely outrageous. About the time I don't think that I can be surprised anymore, something else comes along and just, so if you can appreciate what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up, let me know. Media, so everybody gets to hear the news. Please do, that way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.